understand why it's such a big deal. And joining me now, the former head of the Office of Management and Budget in the Reagan administration, former congressman, author of The Great Deformation, The Corruption of Capitalism, David Stockman. And David, I went through the index looking for the shutdown, and you went through a number, but I don't think you talk about a lot of things that they do wrong in Washington. What do you make of this?
Maybe that's telling. I didn't cover it in 700 pages because it wasn't that important. We had 5 shutdowns when I was in the White House, 5 when I was on Capitol Hill, but these things are vastly exaggerated. They last a few days. All the Chicken Littles in Washington now are clucking louder and louder by the hour. But the fact is, most of government under the guidelines is considered, quote, essential, and it continues to operate. Do you know there are 3.5 million people on the federal payroll, including the armed services? Today, 2.7 million, 80% reported for work. Most of national security, all of law enforcement, the air traffic controllers, the Veteran Administration, the people who process Social Security checks. TSA is still there patting you down and, seizing your shampoo bottle. Yeah. So the point is, the government shutdown isn't the real issue. That's a failure of the appropriations process. It's a symptom of the dysfunction and breakdown of the whole fiscal system. But the real issue coming up is the debt ceiling, and here we have an even greater mythology that's being propagated by the White House. The president is saying that we will default on our debt by October 17th unless the Republicans basically capitulate and give him a clean debt ceiling. Not true. We have $250 billion of revenue now, even in this soggy economy, coming in every month. The interest payment is only $30 billion out of the $250 billion. The president has the full power to allocate or prioritize the incoming revenue to the highest, priorities.
Right.
He can pay every dime of interest. There will never be a default on the public debt. And beyond that, he can pay all the Social Security checks if he wants to. That's $65 billion.
So he's the guy at the kitchen table with a stack of bills.
Right.
And he says, I'll pay Macy's, I'll pay the mortgage company.
Absolutely right. Like every family in America has to do under extreme circumstances where unexpected trouble comes down the pike. And so therefore, he needs to negotiate with the Republicans on Capitol Hill about 2 things. One, deferring Obamacare, which I think will be a disaster. He's already deferred half of it. The big business mandate, that's the first thing. Second, they need to put a real budget plan in place because we are just careening towards a massive fiscal crisis a few years down the road as soon as we have the next period of economic recession or some other setback. Now, by saying that it's, I have no choice, my hands are tied, he's propagating a myth, and he's misleading the American public, and he is unwilling to do something that the big government party in Washington never wants to do, and that is decide what's more important, what's less important, and how do we live closer to our revenue.
David, you're a financial guy, right? And I'm afraid a lot of us, especially those of us that have a financial background, look at this through those narrow view of this is a financial dilemma. There's got to be the political element that has nothing to do with whether they can pay the bills, pay interest, or anything else. This has got to be a way. The public generally likes to blame the Republicans. So it's got to be a way to try to make the public dislike the Republicans even more.
Well, certainly they're trying to exploit this crisis for that reason. On the other hand, the budget process is totally broken down. We haven't had a proper budget resolution plan for 4 or 5 years. They never pass appropriations bills. You drift into these hard stop deadlines like, the appropriations expiring or the debt ceiling being reached. And therefore, the only time that we have an action-forcing event, the only time when we can get some clarity about choices is in this circumstance. And the big government party wants to just kick the can, raise the debt ceiling, passed the continuing resolution.
Which party is the big government party?
The big government party consists of all the Democrats in Washington, most of the Republicans, and certainly the Beltway bandits who comprise, the political action committees,
Sure.
the lobbies on K Street, and so forth.
So